right, I think we have folks are joining us, and so I want to really welcome everyone for joining, and thank you for deciding to spend your hour with us here in Plantae, and to tune into our webinar. And so I want to kind of welcome everyone that are joining, and I want to kind of kick it off and give Andrea Gomez, who's one of our moderators, to start us off. Andrea?
Welcome everyone. So thank you for joining us today. So we are excited to have you here. So this would be a really nice opportunity for us to learn from our speakers. So my name is Andrea Gomez. I'm postdoc from the University of Montreal, and I will be one of the moderators in this webinar. This webinar is about how to build your professional and scientific network. So I'm going to give the stage to Jason to do some introduction about ASPB.
Thank you, Andrea. My name is Jason Padilla, and I am your technical host for today's webinar. This webinar series is brought to you by Plantae, the open online community for plant scientists by plant scientists, powered by the American Society of Plant Biologists. I would like to give a special thank you to all our ASP members who are attending today. Your ASPB membership do support making this webinar possible. For any of you who have not yet joined ASPB, you can join in today and use the discount code %10 to receive a 10% discount on your membership registration. ASPB members get early access to this webinar, and you can learn more about ASPB and the many opportunities we provide at aspb.org. Next slide. In addition, if you've been following Plantae, you know that all our webinars are available and can be you can watch it again on our YouTube channel, and you can find that many other exciting talks, and you may probably will remember or recall one of our speakers who've done a webinar with us before. Next slide. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items to make sure that you get the most out of attending today's webinar. If you experience technical issues, please let us know about those using the chat box or emailing me at jpadilla@aspb.org. And if you have any questions for our guest speakers, please add them to the Zoom Q&A section. Our moderator will be sharing them with our speakers, and we'll get those answered for you. If you are having trouble connecting or need to leave the webinar early, know again that the recording of this webinar will be made available on our YouTube channel. So be sure to follow our Plantae YouTube channel to receive notification when new content are posted, or you could watch again all the many exciting webinars that we've had since we started Plantae. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to our Plantae Fellows who will moderate today's webinar session. So take it away, everyone.
Yeah, today we are going to have 3 different speakers. So I'm going to moderate this section of Selene Fernandez-Valverde from Langevios in the state of Mexico.
Hi, I am Eva Gomez, and I'm going to moderate the part of Sjon Hartman, that is a junior professor of the University of Fribourg.
Hi, everyone. I'm Diwen Wang, and I'm a PhD candidate from Purdue University. I'm working on the interactions between plant and plant pathology. And today I invited Cade Kane as a Purdue PhD candidate from Purdue University too, to share about his story about how to build your professional scientific work from the perspective of graduate student.
This is the outline of this webinar. So we would have the talk of each of our speakers, and then we will have a Q&A section. please feel free to write your questions in the Q&A box. So, and then we are going to start now with our first speaker. So I'm really, really happy to introduce Selene Fernandez-Valverde. She is a research group leader at Langevios in the state of Mexico. So Selene Fernandez laboratory studied the evolution of long non-coding RNAs in animals and plants to predict the function of those long non-coding RNAs using bioinformatic tools. So she was awarded the National Scholarship and L'Oreal UNESCO for Women in Science in 2016 and in the International Raising Talents Fellowship of L'Oreal UNESCO in 2018. She is also a founding member of Más Ciencia por Mexico and for the Mexican Network of Bioinformatics. So one of her hobbies is reading and dancing. She also enjoys scuba diving and whatever is possible. So thank you, Selene, for take our invitation, and we are so happy to listen your advice and tips about how to construct a network.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. So I have structured my advice in a very general manner. I'll be sharing my screen now. I'll wait for a second. There we go. Okay, so thanks everybody for being here. So as I have already been introduced, but I just wanted to give you a bit more background and also kind of pointing out the challenges of keeping a network when you're moving around a bit. So I did my bachelor in Mexico at UNAM, and then I did a PhD and postdoc at the University of Queensland in Australia. And afterwards, I moved back to Mexico to start my group. And as Andrea already mentioned, I have 2 prizes, which were very, very useful for my network. In any case, we are here to learn about networking. And even though we are talking about research networking, I think it's important to understand exactly what we are talking about. So the networking is the process of establishing and nurturing professional relationships with people in your field or industry. And the goal is to build a group of contacts who can provide support, advice, and opportunities for professional development and career advancement. So the main question you want to ask yourself is, why do you want to network? Everybody says you should network. I would say the same, but it's what do you want to get out of it? Where do you want to go next? Who are the people you identify with? This is something you should have very clear before you even try to start networking. You couldn't just show up to a meeting and be like, I am going to network. And this changes a lot also from a cultural perspective. Like some cultures are more prone for networking and some others are not. So you might want to just take that into account as well. How are you as an individual, and also culturally or however you grew up, it's going to impact your networking. So an important thing, and it might sound cliche, is that networking is not collecting contacts. It's about planting relationships. So you need to be prepared. You need to know your goal. What are the type of relationships you're seeking? You need to be open to any interaction. Any interaction can be a possibility for you to build that personal relationship. Whether you take that opportunity or not, it's your decision. You need to present yourself in a way that makes you feel most confident. This is important because sometimes, I don't know, for example, for an interview, they're like, oh, you should dress like this and that and that. But if you feel uncomfortable, that's going to show. Like, you really need to be genuine about how you present yourself, but at the same time, be professional but comfortable. You need to also have ready what is called an elevator pitch. So who are you? What do you do? Why do you do it? Why is it important? How do you go about it? You don't have to throw this elevator pitch to every single person that comes your way. But if people start asking what you're doing, if there is the opportunity, you can very succinctly explain what you're interested in research-wise, and that can help you build that relationship, because the other person might also be looking at connection like you and be like, hey, look, this is another PhD student that's working the same area as me, so maybe we should connect. Okay, so for where to network, you should try, and you're already doing this because you're here. So you should try to attend conference meetings, training programs, workshops for people with similar research interests. And one thing you can do, and it's very, very important, and I think this is why I was invited here, is to join or create professional organizations. The level of connection you get from people when you're working in a professional organization behind the curtain is a lot higher. It's, for example, if you're organizing a webinar, or in-person seminar, the way you're going to connect with the speaker is very different to how they're going to connect with the audience. Okay, so they are going to be talking to you as a peer, and they will remember you. So this is important. It might sound like, for many people, particularly at the early stages of your career, as if you're wasting your time doing these activities, but it's actually what helps build your professional relationships. You should also try, and this is difficult, and it might be more important later on in your career, to attend diplomatic or other types of events, for example, seminars for the general public, not only the scientific ones. You don't have to do this all the time, but whenever you get the chance, you should try to do it, because this is where the funders are. Many times, particularly for foundations, the funders don't come to the very, very specific scientific meeting. They actually go to a more general society meeting, for example, or another type of a gala, etc. I recommend using social media. I am very active on social media. I'll talk about this a bit later on. And you should feel comfortable reaching out to others with similar interests and propose collaborations. Not everybody's going to respond positively to you reaching out, but remember that doesn't say anything about you. As long as you are polite and clear about what you're trying to do together, then people can choose to engage in this relationship or not. But that's not your choice, and you don't have a choice if you don't reach out. Okay, so how to network? This can vary a lot, so I try to just put some key points here. So the main thing is to engage in conversations. This can be whatever style, so everybody's different. I am personally a very socialized introvert, so for me, I can talk a lot in person, but it didn't come naturally. I had to practice quite a lot. But for example, for me, what's most comfortable is talking one-to-one. So I try to do that whenever I'm in a meeting. I not so often will be in big groups. I try to be with a few people because that's easier for me. But if for you, you're a very extroverted person, go ahead. Like, you can just talk to big groups and that's fine. You can talk to an audience only, and you can talk also on an online platform. Like now, many meetings have these online platforms where you can chat to other participants. And if you feel more comfortable that way, that's fine as well. You can also build relationships from that. Listen. This is so important. I cannot mention how many times I have been in a networking space when some people have read all this advice and they have just thrown the information at you, and they are not even engaging in like a back and forth exchange of ideas. So by listening is how you find joint interest and how you find new ideas, and who are the people who are thinking like you or might be interested in collaborating with you. It's important to try to be as much as possible authentic and sincere in your interactions. People with common interests will find it easier to build genuine relationships with you if you're being authentic and sincere. You can be authentic and sincere by just saying, like, I'm here to network professionally, and that's perfectly fine. You need to also challenge your assumptions. This is an important one. I might not talking to a person in particular because they look, dress, act differently than me. Am I intimidated? This happens a lot from students to professors. I would say that some professors are not very open to having these interactions, but some are. And you should kind of lose a little bit of this fear, because people are just people, even Nobel Prize winners. I can mention, like, in this Rising Talents Award, it was the 20 years of the Laura UNESCO Foundation, and they had invited a lot of the previous winners. So there was a few Nobel Prizes, etc. And we had this dinner, and it's quite overwhelming to be like, okay, I need to talk to these people. But literally, I just went and sat with some of them, and we started talking, and they were all really nice. And with some of them, I have maintained a long-term relationship professionally. So this is something you should try, and it's not always going to work, okay? But you should keep trying. Okay, now about social media. So personally, I'm very active on Twitter. I use it a lot to find papers, to find people, to just talk to people that might be interested in similar themes. And it is a great tool. It's definitely not for everybody. But if any social media you like, it can help you expand your network if you invest time in it. You need to be aware of why do you want to use this social media. What do you want to know about? Who do you want to know about? What image do you want to show to the world? This is called an online persona. And this online persona, you want it to be as close as to you for the genuine part as possible, okay? And not everybody feels comfortable sharing everything. I share parts of my life that are not only professional, but not everybody wants to do that. And that's also perfectly fine. Who do you want to connect with? So you can, like the good thing of social media is you can follow people that you're interested in. And also you need to know that blocking, muting, or unfollowing are a possibility. If you're no longer getting anything out of a particular relationship, you can just cut it off in a simpler way that you would do in person. And but remember that the internet is forever, so think carefully about what you're going to post there. I would say when you're very emotionally distressed, try to draft and then go back to it later. It happens a lot that then you don't really want to post this in retrospect. So maybe just give it a bit of time, particularly when you're angry or when you're feeling not so engaged with your work, etc. And you should also draw limits. So for example, one thing I used to do, and I am not so good with it now after the post-pandemic, is I would only use it at work when I was traveling between meetings. So that made it so I was still at work and obviously in like a safe space, not crossing a road or something. But that way I was engaged, but it wasn't taking time after work for me. But whatever works for you, you can put timers or whatever it is, because dopamine hits can easily take over your life, as you might probably already know if you're using these platforms. And one thing I want to mention about social media, for me, it has been very useful for things like, for example, for performance reviews. It sounds weird, but because I post all of my public engagements, then I can just backtrack. I can, when I need to do a yearly report, I just go through my Twitter and I just go like, okay, this date I did this date I did this, etc., etc., etc. So it can have other uses as well. And another way to network is to do collaborations. So I would say reach out. Most people are happy to help, not everybody. It's good to lay down the rules first, ideally in writing. If you can have an agreement of collaboration, that's good. Maybe it doesn't have to be that much, but you need to have an email or something that says what you are trying to get out of this relationship when it's a formal collaboration. And I would recommend trying something small first, and don't commit to something too big with someone you don't already have a relationship with, or your advisor, if you're a student, has already a relationship with that they know it's prolific. Be mindful of other people's time. Be mindful of your time too. Be truthful to your work, be honest, and avoid overcommitting just to please others. You don't have to say yes to everything. So if you can't do it, you can do it, and you can be polite about it, but you can literally say politely, no, I can't, I literally can't, but I really want to keep this relationship. And that's also fine. Most people understand. And some red flags for networking is if you're having one-sided conversations, if you see that the person is not interested in building a relationship, if you see that this person only reaches out to you not only one time, but several times, needing help, and ignore your request for help. I mean, this is it's a relationship, so it's a back and forth again. If you feel that the relationship is not quite genuine, or they don't have your best interest in mind, and you don't have theirs as well. If they're forgetting about your contributions, and if they are not following up on commitments beyond what's reasonable. I mean, we are all rather busy, but if they consistently not follow up on commitments, then maybe it's time to fade out the relationship. And try to keep your network alive. Follow up with your contacts after meetings and events, and follow through on any promises you make. Now, I mean, for example, I have been in many meetings where the contact is actually through Slack. So you can just send a short message like say, hey, it was really nice meeting you. And if you're ever around, feel free to write me an email or write me here. And that's enough, okay? But that makes people feel that you're thinking about them. You can keep in touch via instant messaging, email, or social media. And you should try to celebrate your network successes and achievements. If you have built genuine relationships, this will come naturally. You just will feel rewarded for whatever people in your network are doing. And you should try to make an effort to meet up people in person whenever possible. Like if you're all going to the same meeting, or if you're if you're in the same town visiting. I know it might be a bit of particularly when you're traveling, you're tired, it's a bit of a stretch, but really there's nothing like in-person contact to keep your network alive. And please remember to give back. So this is not one way. You're not only taking, you're also giving. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Selene, for sharing with us your experience and some advices about how to build our scientific network. So we have a question in the chat. So somebody asked how to collaborate with researchers who have similar interests, but due to the low infrastructural research facilities in where you live, they reject networks.
So, well, I'm not sure if I understood correctly the question, but I mean, this has happened to me from where I am based. Like, for example, if you are from Mexico, some people would just not try to engage because they don't feel it's beneficial for them. What I try to do is not follow up on those engagements. Like, well, maybe my opinion is like, I could contribute to their projects and they could contribute to mine, but if they don't want to collaborate naturally, then it's going to be quite forceful to do this. And there's usually several people working on the same thing. So, you know, try not to take it too personally or try to think so much about why it's happening. I mean, I'm saying because of Mexico, but it could be many other reasons. I mean, I don't know. I'm not in their head. So just try to move on and try to move forward with a different place. And this is something also, I think it's important that many times, I would say we try to always collaborate from the global south to the global north. And this is also not ideal in the sense that there's also lots of knowledge and infrastructure in the global south. So maybe just expand your horizons as well of people who are working in your field and you might want to collaborate with.
So we have a second question. Somebody is asking, what is the difference between network and platform?
So I think this is confusing because a network, I mean, there's other network can mean many things. So it can mean, for example, a social network. And a platform usually is like a program or it can even be a device that does something in particular. So for example, a sequencing platform, it's a device, and a social, Facebook is a platform for a particular social network. And here we're talking about networking between humans. So just building a network of people that you can engage with and interact with. I hope that's clear.
Yeah. Thank you so much again, Selene, for this for your talk. So now we are going to move to our next speaker.
Okay, so hello everyone. I am Eva Maria Gomez Alvarez. I am a PhD student from Santana, Pisa, and I'm going to present today a junior professor from the University of Fribourg, Sjon Hartman. He studies with plants and low oxygen sensing, and he does not only have a lot of interesting publications, but he's also very active in social media. And I actually suggest you to follow his account, his Twitter account. And nothing, I just wanted to thank him for accepting the invitation. And well, I'm sure he has a lot of interesting things to say, so please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Eva, and thank you all so much for attending in such great numbers. It's special to be here on such a live event, and it's also the first time I'm not giving a team talk, so a presentation about my work, but about how to build your professional network. So bear with me, it's the first time, and there might be some redundancy with the previous talk as we might have some overlap, but I think that redundancy probably shows you that we both find this quite important. So maybe that would be helpful, but I think I also have some unique things. So when preparing this, it was actually, so I started my own lab here in Freiburg last year, and preparing this presentation was actually a nice way of me to reflect back a little bit on so what did my scientific network do for me, basically? Do I have a scientific network? How did I develop and build this, and how did it help me in any way? So let's start with what scientists like to do, is define things. So what is a network? And I try to find some definitions. I think I can summarize it as such that we are a group of people which share certain interests that interact regularly through email, social media, and in person, maybe via the phone, and for mutual gain. And interaction may at one point in time not be mutual from both sides, but over time it's hopefully mutually, else this would not be a network or an interaction or a relationship, professional relationship that you have built, right? So very abstract. I mean, the mutual gain can be many things, and I think it's a mix of things, and I will go back a little bit more into detail in the next slide, but it basically covers scientific knowledge or knowledge exchange, but also support. So either professional support, but also personal or social support. And for me, I think the network also provides something that floats into the sense of community. So a sense of belonging to a group of people, basically, that you share certain values and certain interests with. And I think this kind of helps you also to feel a little bit more safe in your environment. So to get a little bit more into detail, what I mean with this is, again, classify in certain topics. So I was asked, what do you think are the advantages of a scientific network or establishing a professional a network? So I think they can be classified, but this is far from a complete list, but I think these are the major important points. So scientifically, it can help you a lot, okay? So you are probably working on a very niche subject with niche techniques. And if you have established a solid, wide-ranging network, maybe you can contact them for specific questions, for techniques, for perspectives on your research problems. And this can ultimately even lead to starting collaborations. And looking back at myself, this has happened definitely multiple times where we had just some interactions about scientific problems and how to fix certain things, and this ultimately leads to collaborations and even publications. And these are still networks or connections that I value very much and have even become friends at some point, right? So that's scientifically. But I think also career-wise, it's very important to have to try and develop your network as best as you can, because the bigger your network, the more chance you get, the more exposed you get to all kinds of opportunities that are there that can help you enhance your career if you have that ambition, right? So you will see basically every conference that is applicable to you or that may be of interest of you, the chance that you will see it is bigger, the bigger and the stronger your network is. The same for potential job vacancies or openings, the same for training opportunities, the same for potential grant applications. So the larger and the stronger your network, the more likely the chances that you will not miss any of the potential opportunities that could be presented to you. And I think also the stronger your network is, the more likely you are to succeed to go to certain conferences or land that job or potentially even get that grant. Okay. So for me, potentially the most important part of the network, what I've realized thinking back about it is the feel of support that you get. So this is two ways, and it can be very professional and it can be very personal. So trying to think of an example, so I've had many times during my PhD where I was stuck, and sometimes you can discuss with your supervisor or with your colleagues, but sometimes you're just curious and you have networks maybe at other universities or even people you met during a conference, and you wonder how they deal with certain situations. And that this can be very helpful to have that kind of support, like you're doing well, or it's okay, or maybe you can do it in another way. So that is more personal, but also professional, like you are thinking to write an application for a grant or I don't know, a job. And this can also help you, of course, to find they can advise you on this. And finally, I think the more established your network is, the more visibility you have, and I think this will increase. So we're not only doing science to pipe it and publish it in the paper, but hopefully we also want that paper to have impact, right? And we increase the chance that it has impact by the more people that we see. So for instance, we just published a commentary in New Phytologist, and it's just a small body of work, but I just look at the ultrametrics, and it was seen by already 250,000 people. So that is a lot more than typically the people that go to the New Phytologist website and look for certain papers, right? So that has potential that people read your work. And ultimately, which is very nice, is that ultimately maybe you can build some friendships, and this was maybe never the goal, but you actually, I mean, as you are traveling or moving careers as a scientist, sometimes it's difficult to maintain friendships from when you were young, which maybe we all would like, right? But we also go on journeys and meet new friends and develop it as such. So I think that's also very nice. So how do you develop a scientific network? So I think we're all developed. We already have a network, depending on your career stage, and it just takes time, right? The older you get, the more likely you're to interact with people, and the more likely you're to extend and build a network, basically, that consists of many, strong connections or relationships. But you can enhance it, right, by certain decisions. But if you are just starting off your PhD and you're like, oh no, I don't have a network, that's fine. It will just take time, okay? If you are a senior postdoc and you think you don't have a network, maybe you can listen to some of the tips today of if you want to increase your network of what you can do, right? So here is just an example, but you can imagine that your network develops, your scientific or professional network develops over time. So if you are a student, probably your network consists just of the teachers that you have, your students you know, and maybe if you're doing internship in a lab, that is the people that you know, right? And that you can go to for support and help and advice. But as you start your PhD, maybe not only does the host lab become your network, but also neighboring labs in the department working also on plant sciences. At one point, collaborators will come for an invited talk or something like this, and maybe you build a connection with them. You have the support staff and the facilities of the university, which are also important to be successful and also have support in your science. Maybe you are partially funded by a company which you have interactions and meetings with, or something like this, right? And as you transition into postdoc phase, maybe you have had so many interactions over the years that you're starting to feel like you're part of the web of your research field. So if you work on oxygen signaling, you're starting to get a sense of community of your network within the oxygen community or biotic stress or whatever you work on, right? And I think that's how it typically goes. At least that's how it went for me. But of course, it's dependent on many things, which I will discuss maybe in the next slide. As a postdoc, maybe also already as a PhD, you might sometimes interact with, for instance, also journal editors or something at a conference, or you have now maybe some published papers, or they ask you to review, and this is also how you can build some connections and relationships. Now, at the professional prof level, at the PI level, I don't know what further you can do to increase your connections, but I was thinking about this just now. I guess it would be relevant or important to start getting connections to, for instance, your institute leadership. So who are the bosses at the university, because you want to maybe have an idea of how they value you and maybe how they can also give you advice to mutually beneficial outcomes, let's say. And of course, if you're a PI, you will have alumni that unfortunately at one point will leave your lab. And I think it's also important to stay close to them, right? Since I'm going quite slow, I'll move on to the next slide. So how extensive your network is and becomes, I think, is dependent on many factors. And unfortunately, you cannot control all of them. And I think I've listed some here, going from things you cannot control to things you can control. And I was making this presentation, and I had this nice picture, which I typically like to put in my presentation. Then I was looking at this plant, and I was thinking, maybe I could use this as an analogy, right? So a plant is basically supported by a network, by its root system, right? And when it germinates, the network supports it by its roots that give it all the support it needs, water, nutrients, whatever. right? And even physical stability to be in its place. But of course, it starts off small, like our network. But as the plant develops and the root grows, the network expands, right? But how successful that network becomes is not just driven by time, but also by things like privilege and luck. So for us, it's maybe where we were born and the labs we went to and our scientific pedigree, and also just luck events that happen in life. And the same is true for the plant. I mean, how supportive a network for a plant is also dependent on where it germinates and the kind of stresses it has in its life. Now, that doesn't mean you are completely based on luck. There are things you can do. And as we all know, as plant biologists, plants have developed these very nice signaling cascades that can help it to extend their networks, for instance, by making mutual beneficial interactions with for instance, mycorrhiza, right? And they do this by communication between your network, your additional network, and the plant host itself. And it's the same for us. It's depending on our communication skills with our network. And I think that's where the secret lies in developing your scientific network, looking at bringing it back again to the person, let's say. So what these I think that are important that help you to shape your network. So some things you can control, some things you cannot control, but things you can control, I think, are important to focus on. And I wanted to briefly go into that. So how do you enhance the chances of success by making a more extensive or lasting or strong network? I wanted to focus both on online and offline appearance and networking. So let's start with online. I think I did give a talk, or we had a panel discussion once, and I don't know who came up with this, but it's something, a question you might ask yourself. People will Google you when you apply for a job, whether you like it or not, when you get some kind of letter. If your name comes by for something you need of them, they might Google you. They might not just open your CV, they will Google you. Now, what do they see? And what do you want them to see? So maybe ask your friend to Google you. There are some algorithms. So if you Google yourself 3 or 4 times, it will change that ultimately what you see. But try to have someone that hopefully never Googled you. And what do people then see? Are you happy with what they find, the kind of content, or do you want to change that? And I think you can control what they see partially by having professional lab pages. So from your faculty. Also have a Google Scholar page, have an org ID or ORCID, I don't know how to call it. Maybe have a ResearchGate page where you update your science, and consider using social media. So for me, Twitter is really the social media for science. It really helped me a lot. I think I was invited to talks across the world simply by having connections on Twitter. It's currently trying to be replaced by Mastodon, I think, on the scientific level, but I'm not sure this is such a success yet. And LinkedIn, I think, is maybe more useful. It is useful, but maybe more useful if you are trying to look also into industry to build your network there. And what should be there, definitely, I think, is having a short and accurate biography, and maybe mention your interests there and your expertise, what drives you, and maybe links to websites that you want people to see, where they get a good, reliable picture of you. Okay, professionally. So if you are not on Twitter yet and you are interested in this, I can understand that through changes in management at Twitter, some people are not very happy to be there anymore. And I've also had my doubts, but I'm still there. And I think it's very, very important if you want to develop your scientific network to be there. So consider joining Twitter if you're not already there. Maybe introduce yourself briefly, try to find some people like Plantae to retweet your tweet, to retweet you, and hopefully get some followers like that. Follow and watch first, like as was mentioned in the previous discussion. Take some time to watch and learn before you start engaging. And once you start engaging, do it slowly. Learn what is normal. Just see the development of the scientific world. And start following people that you meet in real life. So what if you are offline and you meet people? So networking also happens mostly offline. I think the real connections are formed offline at conferences and at invited speakers, right? So join conferences any chance you get. Join invited speakers at your university or at your lab. Try to not just join for the talk, meet for social events, try to join for lunch or drinks or dinner, and try to make a good impression there. So if you go to a conference, what you typically see is that groups of PhD students come there and they stick all together and are very shy. And I understand that is convenient and you feel more safe there. But if you want to make a network, I would really advise you to not only stick to your friends, maybe with one friend, and try to rotate some tables with the lunches and the dinners to meet people in that way. Okay, try to be professional but genuine and sincere, and try to be a bit prepared. So what are you going to say, right? If people ask you who you are and what you do, so maybe again have a short and accurate bio, have a pitch ready, as was mentioned before. Tell them, where do you work, what do you do, why is it interesting, why is it cool? Try to get that spark in your eyes. Think about your project, why you like it so much, and try to transfer that in 30 seconds to the people that you meet and when you meet them. So maybe sometimes through Twitter you already know someone, and then it can be very handy to talk about this. So, I saw you like this, and then it's very easy to start talking like that. If you mention someone and you have a poster or a talk, invite them to your poster or talk, so that can help you to have something to talk about, right? And if you really specifically dead set on meeting a certain person that you are interested in because they are a rock star in whatever field, then try to prepare and maybe try to find a way to keep and engage with them. But most of all, I know this sounds like lots of guidance and things you should follow, but just try, and it's okay to fail, and you can make some mistakes, but just try and remember to have fun. You know, for me, it was so engaging to meet people. I think I would not be passionate to be in science at all if I didn't have a network. It's really what is the foundation, it's the roots of what I do. And I hope that hopefully you also feel like this. And for that, I think I want to stop because I'm already a little bit over time. So thank you so much for your time. And yeah, let's hope some questions I can help you with.
Yes, there are several questions actually. There are some of them that there are some people asking you how to contact or how to continue the contact with people outside academia, for example, politicians, citizens, industry, which are your suggestions to reach people that is from outside, let's say, academia?
Right. Okay, so I think that's very case by case specific, and it also depends on why you want to reach them, I guess. It's not an easy question because it's a very broad question, I would say. So, I mean, join social media, or how do you call it, science communication events. So if you want to talk or build your network outside of academia, either go to meetings where also companies are, if you are interested in that, in industry. But for me, something I did is a lot of social science communication. So I went to something called Pop of Science Battle, and then you talk to a lot of regular citizens that are very excited to talk about your work and your project. And that's a very nice way to interact with citizens, but also with journalists and people from the press office, etc. So yeah, I mean, if you want to talk to people and make networks, you have to go and find a way to reach them, and probably you have to go to them. They won't come to you.
Okay, thank you so much. There are other questions. For example, asking when you go to a new unfamiliar scientific community, they ask if you would adapt and try to socialize, trying to adapt to this new community, or actually if you could reach out from your specific starting point, let's say, or background.
Yeah, again, I guess it's a good question. I think it depends a lot on your situation. So I would say, for instance, my field is flooding biology, and I'm now stepping into epigenetics and stress memory. I think it would be good to go to these kind of meetings, and always as a disclaimer, look, I've been having this background. I can give you knowledge, and I'm happy and passionate about this, but I've become very passionate and interested in your field. Forgive me for making some mistakes, but I'm happy to be here and to learn from you and try to see that hopefully you can help each other by admitting the things that you don't know and enhance each other's like strengths or expertise, let's say.
Okay, and maybe I ask you now the last question, and so the others, because there are quite a lot.
I will answer them.
maybe yes, maybe later in the common discussion. So there is people actually asking about how does it impact the personal and social life posted on social media with the professional life?
How does it impact the professional life or the personal life?
Let's say that the things that you put from a personal side, how it impacts in your professional life, maybe.
Yeah, I think it depends. I think we can all have some common sense of things you should maybe or should not post as a personal, from your personal life on your. It depends also what you use your social media channel for. Is it just scientifically, or do you want to use it professionally? Then probably you should not post pictures of you partying at 3 o'clock at night in a bar, let's say, as an extreme example, right? But it's nothing wrong with saying, look, we're in the park having lunch, nice idea. And it's nice to see, to learn, right? Behind the person behind the scientist, let's say. So I think it's very good to show something about personal life. I think that makes us more human and maybe feel more connected about each other, but don't overdo it, let's say.
Okay, thank you so much for your presentation, and I think we can move on.
Okay, so we are going to have our third speaker, and so it's my great pleasure to introduce Cade Kane. So Cade is a PhD candidate at Department of Botany and Plant Pathology at Purdue University. Now he's undertaking Fulbright Student Fellowship to be in Australia and do some research to look at the effects of climate change on plant physiology. So Cade himself has developed a strong network and made friends in his research field, which helps him a lot in many ways. So today he will share his stories about how to build up a professional network from graduate student side. So now let's welcome Cade.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm just gonna sort of I have a few major highlights and like that. I study plant physiology related to drought and leaf phenology and deciduous trees and different things like that. So if anyone out there is, is interested in those things, definitely reach out to me. I'll say I have definitely had, I think I'll probably hit on some things the two speakers previously have mentioned, because I think they integrate pretty well with what I'm going to talk about, like sort of luck and, being at the right place at the right time, I think has played a big part in my career. I mean, I work hard at all the jobs I had as an undergrad and working in labs and stuff, but only when I got an opportunity to go study abroad, like in Ireland, I worked in a lab there. I basically volunteered there for free, and then coming back, my current advisor at Purdue knew the person I worked for there. He had just started at Purdue and was looking to fill out his lab. And he came into where I worked in the herbarium one day, and I asked him what he worked on. He's like, oh, like stomatal evolution and stuff. So I meant, oh, do you know this person? And I didn't know at the time, because I was working in plant pathology, that she was sort of a real big shot in the field of stomatal evolution, stomatal response evolution stuff. And so that was a sort of a lucky encounter. And then kind of going into that, I think a major thing that I've noticed in my path has been using the ability to leverage your advisor's network to help you. Like, when you're first starting and you're in your first year of your PhD or master's or even an undergrad, you can't be expected to have these connections, and that's okay. You're supposed to be building those through time. So asking your advisor, oh, do you know, who they know if around in the field, and if they know anybody working on, if there's something that you guys don't exactly work on, but you want to pursue it, they very well could know someone who does that sort of work. And that's kind of what led me to the Fulbright I'm participating in now. I'm down here in Tasmania at the University of Tasmania, working with my PhD advisor's PhD advisor. And that was a connection I never would have really made at a conference, because I'd never met him at a conference, but because of, a few degrees of separation, I had this opportunity to come and work with someone who's sort of a giant in the field of plant hydraulics. The other thing I think has been most important for me in networking is like going to conferences, like the other two speakers have said. And I'd say for me personally, the smaller conferences tend to be better. Like I know ASPD has some like nice regional ones, and every field has some very specific conferences. So my first year of my PhD in I went to a conference in Italy. I got the opportunity to do that thanks to my advisor, who was very great in sending me there. It's wonderful when advisors fund students to go to conferences, once every other year or so. So there I was able to meet lots of people in the field who I didn't know any of at the time. And for me personally, I think that was kind of an advantage. Like I wasn't starstruck particularly because I had just moved from plant pathology into plant physiology. And so I sort of didn't really know anybody. And so I was able to just like treat everybody as a person, just like has been mentioned before. And at conferences, I think the best place to network is after the conference at dinner or at the bar afterwards. I know that's can be tough for people who are a little more introverted, but like even if you just go for dinner and talk to a few people at the table, and then and that's enough. That's great. That's a great opportunity. That's when people start to loosen up and you get chatting, and that's when like all the big collaborations, both in research that I've and personally that I've had making friends at these conferences have been sort of at the post-conference dinner and drinks and things like that. And to go along with that, these conferences are usually a few days. So what I like to do is to go, one day sort of go out with those clumps of PhD students and postdocs and get to know them, because those are the people who are going to be your peers. If you stay in academia, those are your peers for the rest of your career, most likely. And so it's good to know their faces and to know their names. And then the other days, I try to go out and interact with more of at the faculty level, because those are the people who are kind of going to potentially be your collaborators and your benefactors in the very near future, looking for postdocs and things like that. And so at this conference in Italy, this is my very first experience trying to do sort of like brute force networking, like just going up to somebody who's like important in the field and like, oh, like I'm going to go introduce myself to them. This is important. It was this, he's older. He was considered, he's like the grandfather of plant hydraulics. And so I walk up to him and I go, I'm Cade Kane. I work for Scott McAdam at Purdue University. And I probably got 10 seconds into talking, and he just goes, I'm going to go over here now, and turns and walks away. And so I sort of had this first time of really trying to kind of force a connection, and I immediately fell flat on my face. And that sort of taught me two very important things. Like for me, I think that my network, my close network is very much people who I would consider to be friends mostly. Like, they're not my best friend and we're not always chatting, but they're people who I'm very friendly with, and I would be, more than happy to always go out and have dinner with, and we can chat for hours at a time. And then so if you come across someone who's rude to you at a conference and, you just don't get along with, that's probably not someone who you really would want to go work for as a postdoc. That's my feeling about that. And, so don't necessarily try to force a relationship with someone just because they're important in the field. And then don't waste your time on people who don't want to give you the time of day. And then this is the bit of networking advice my advisor gave me sort of early on, is the best, he said, he was like, the best tool for networking is always be doing interesting research. Because if you show up to a conference and you don't have any interesting research to talk about, then, sort of his view was like, well, what's the point of networking if you don't have interesting research to talk about? But I think to me, that just is like, you have to be interested in your research in order to make those connections that are like long lasting and will be helpful for you for the rest of your career. And then a few small things. As far as social media, I find social media to be great at sort of maintaining connections that I've made at conferences, and then just it's sort of like a pre-game for conferences. You kind of can look at who's attending the conference and be like, oh, do I know them? Oh, they follow me on Twitter, but I've never actually met them. They'd be a great person to talk to. And then I like ResearchGate is a good sort of sciencey social media, and then Twitter is probably the other best one. And then if you're going to a conference and you're presenting a poster, I think if you can, put your picture on the poster. That has led to because people don't always know your name, and you're just a name in a book at the conference manuals. But if they see a picture of you and they go, wow, this is a really interesting poster, I'm going to go find this guy, then that has led to a lot of like good chats and a lot of good networking opportunities from the couple of conferences I've attended. And yeah, I mean, that's basically all I've got. I'm happy to take any questions, and yeah, good luck out there. Have fun, make friends. That's I think one of the most critical parts.
Yeah, great talk, Cade. So thanks, Cade, for sharing his stories and tips. And yeah, yeah, Cade paints a vivid picture, and yeah, always sometimes it happens when you reach to people, but people are not very, very friendly. So actually, I have a question for Cade. Is as a graduate student, when you reach to other people to talk, especially for the unfamiliar, strange people, and how could you overcome your physical problems to reach to them? So as a graduate student, sometimes they will be afraid to talk with professors, to talk with the other people who are at higher level. So how could we overcome these physical problems for ourselves?
Yeah, it's like difficult and can be tough. I'd say a few bits, like I said, going sort of when you remove yourself from the more formal conference setting, it's usually a little bit easier for me to like start chatting to more senior professors when you're not in sort of the stodgy like conference hall setting. And the other thing that is potentially good is if you know the other PhD students who are at a meeting or whatever, or even at just your university, talking with them, and then they can potentially introduce you to their professor, and like that's like leveraging your network. These PhD students, and if they are willing to, which hopefully they are, then they can introduce you to their professor, and that's a good way. That's a good like foot in the door for how to get started with those kinds of relationships.
Okay, good answer. So someone asked you, so when you reach to the peoples, how can you get the contact details? So usually, what kind of way you use to get their information?
Yeah, so like if it's on social media, then it's relatively easy. You can send a direct message and kind of start there. But if you're at a conference, like I would just like straight up ask if you're having a good conversation and you think it's going somewhere, and like you're like, okay, you're kind of talking ideas for potential collaboration or potential employment, just ask for their email or give them yours. If you have business cards, that's great, but just like getting a notepad and writing out your email address, or asking for them, that's like the best way. And then because most academics will, if they're worth interacting with, they will eventually, maybe it takes some time, respond to your emails.
Okay, thanks, Cade. So thanks everybody's question, and thank everybody to join us today. Due to the time limitation, we have to move to the end. So all the questions that was not answered here will be posted online. So today is great. We have a wonderful webinar to talk about how to build up our professional network. And today's talk will be recorded and post on the YouTube channel and the Plantae website. So please check out Plantae website for more content. So now I will give the stage to Jason for the final wrap up.
All right. Again, thank you everyone for joining us today. And again, a very, very special thank you to our speakers and moderator. It's such a very insightful content that you guys shared, and thank you for sharing your personal stories and your personal journeys as you were building your network and continue to build your professional network. With all of that, I hope that you enjoyed today's webinar, and hope that you would tune in and watch our other upcoming webinar and our past webinar by following our YouTube channel. Thank you again, everyone, and I hope you all have a great rest of your week. Stay safe and well, and hope to see you again soon. Bye, everyone.